He hadn't kissed anyone in 6 years. Not since the funeral. Not since he decided feelings were too dangerous, too expensive, too close to the edge of breaking completely. But now Caleb Ward stood on a wooden stage in front of 300 people, his neighbor's lips pressed against his, her hand on his jaw, and something inside him, something he'd buried under routine and silence and the weight of being just enough for his daughter, was tearing open. The crowd was cheering, Ellie was clapping, and Caleb was drowning in a feeling he'd promised himself he'd never let back in. Like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The lake didn't freeze anymore. Not like it used to when Caleb was a kid, when winters meant ice thick enough to skate on, and summers meant fishing until your hands smelled like bait for days. Now it just sat there, gray and still, reflecting the sky without giving much back. That was fine. Caleb preferred things that didn't ask for anything. He stood at the kitchen window, mug in hand, watching the water through the gap in the trees. 6:15 in the morning. Ellie wouldn't be up for another 20 minutes. The coffee was bad. He'd used the same filter twice, but he drank it anyway because throwing it out felt wasteful, and making a fresh pot felt like effort he didn't have. The house was quiet. It was always quiet. He liked it that way. Behind him, the floorboards creaked. Ellie appeared in the doorway, her hair sticking up in 3 directions, clutching the stuffed rabbit she was too old for but wouldn't give up. She was 9, small for her age, serious in a way that made people uncomfortable. "You're up early," Caleb said without turning around. "Couldn't sleep." "Bad dream?" "No, just awake." She climbed onto the chair by the table, pulling her knees up to her chest. Caleb set his mug down and started making her breakfast: toast, peanut butter, apple slices. The same thing every morning. Routine was easier. Routine didn't leave room for mistakes. "There's a truck next door," Ellie said. Caleb glanced out the side window. She was right. A moving truck sat in the driveway of the house that had been empty for 8 months. He hadn't even heard it pull in. "Guess someone's moving in. Do you think they have kids?" "I don't know." "Do you think they'll be nice?" "I don't know, Elle." She picked at the edge of her toast, not eating. Caleb watched her for a moment, then sat down across from her. He wasn't good at this part. The talking part. The part where he was supposed to know what to say to make things better. "You okay?" She shrugged. "School's fine?" "Yeah." "Friends?" "Yeah." He nodded. She was lying, but he didn't push. Pushing meant opening doors he didn't know how to close again. "Eat your breakfast. We leave in 30 minutes. She nodded and took a small bite. Caleb finished his coffee and went upstairs to get dressed. By the time he came back down, Ellie was at the window, her face pressed against the glass. "Dad?" "What?" "There's a lady." Caleb walked over and looked. A woman stood in the driveway next door, her back to them, directing 2 guys carrying a couch. She was tall, dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, wearing jeans and a plain white shirt that looked expensive even from a distance. She moved like someone used to being in charge. "Huh," Caleb said. "She's pretty." "Get your shoes on." Ellie didn't move. "Ellie." "Okay. Okay." "Yeah." Caleb worked at the hardware store in town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. And steady was what mattered. He knew the inventory by heart, could find anything in under a minute, and didn't mind the customers who came in looking for someone to solve problems they didn't understand. Fixing things made sense. People didn't. His boss, Ray, was 62 and talked too much, but he paid on time and didn't ask questions, which made him tolerable. Today, Ray was going on about the spring festival, some town tradition Caleb had managed to avoid for the last 3 years. "You should bring Ellie this year," Ray said, leaning against the counter. "She'd like it. There's games, food, that dunk tank thing. We're fine. You say that a lot." "Because it's true." Ray gave him a look. One of those looks that meant he wanted to say something but wasn't going to. Caleb appreciated that about him. Ray knew when to stop. The bell above the door chimed. Caleb glanced up and felt something shift in his chest before he could stop it. It was her. The woman from next door. She walked in like she belonged there, glancing around with the kind of casual confidence that made Caleb immediately wary. She wasn't from here. That much was obvious. Everything about her, the way she moved, the way she dressed, even the way she looked at things, screamed somewhere else. Ray straightened up, grinning. "Morning! What can we do for you?" She smiled. It was polite but not warm. I need a drill. Something reliable. Not too heavy. We've got a few options. Caleb here can help you out. Caleb shot Ray a look, but Ray was already walking away, whistling like he'd done something clever. The woman turned to Caleb and extended her hand. Victoria. He hesitated, then shook it. Her grip was firm. Caleb. You work here? Yeah. Good. I'm terrible with tools. I need someone who knows what they're talking about. Caleb led her to the back aisle where they kept the drills. She followed without saying much, her eyes scanning the shelves like she was cataloging everything. He pulled down a mid-range cordless model and handed it to her. This one's solid, battery lasts, not too heavy. She turned it over in her hands, testing the weight. You sure? Yeah. Okay. She looked at him, and for a second, something flickered in her expression. Curiosity, maybe, or amusement. You don't talk much, do you? Not really. Fair enough. She tucked the drill under her arm. I'll take it. Caleb rang her up. She paid in cash, which felt oddly old-fashioned, and left without another word. The bell chimed again as the door closed behind her. Ray reappeared, grinning. She's your new neighbor, right? Caleb didn't answer. You should be friendlier. I was fine. You were borderline rude. She got what she needed. Ray shook his head, laughing. You're hopeless. Huh. That evening, Caleb made spaghetti. It was one of the 3 things he knew how to cook without screwing up. Ellie sat at the table, doing homework that she clearly wasn't interested in. She kept glancing at the window. She's still over there, Ellie said. Who? The lady, Victoria. Caleb didn't look up from the stove. So? So maybe we should say hi. We don't need to say hi. That's rude. It's not rude, it's just not necessary. Ellie frowned, chewing on the end of her pencil. Mom would have said hi. Caleb's hand tightened on the spoon. He didn't respond. Ellie didn't push, but the silence sat heavy between them. After dinner, Ellie went upstairs to read, and Caleb stood at the sink, washing dishes and staring out at the yard. The light was on next door. He could see Victoria moving around inside, unpacking boxes, hanging things on the wall. She moved with purpose, like someone who didn't waste time. He turned away and finished the dishes. The next morning, Ellie was at the window again. Dad, she's outside. Caleb was pouring cereal into a bowl. He didn't look up. Okay. She's doing yoga. Good for her. On the lawn. That made him glance over. Sure enough, Victoria was in her front yard, barefoot, moving through some kind of stretching routine that looked both complicated and completely effortless. She was wearing leggings and a tank top, and Caleb turned back to the cereal before Ellie noticed him staring. Can I go say hi? No. Why not? Because we don't know her. That's the whole point of saying hi. Caleb sighed. Ellie, please? He looked at his daughter. She was watching him with those wide, serious eyes that she'd had since she was a toddler, the eyes that made it hard to say no, even when he wanted to. Fine, but don't bother her. Ellie was out the door before he finished the sentence. Caleb watched from the window as she crossed the yard and stopped a few feet away from Victoria. Victoria looked up, surprised, then smiled. She said something. Ellie said something back. Then Victoria laughed, a real laugh, the kind that made her shoulders shake, and Caleb felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. He turned away. Ellie came back 20 minutes later, breathless and grinning. She's so cool, Dad. Caleb was at the table, reading the news on his phone. That's great. She used to run a company, like a huge one. She said she gave it to her brother and moved here because she wanted to live somewhere quiet. Uh-huh. And she's been to 17 countries. 17. Elle, you need to get ready for school. She said I could come over and help her unpack if it's okay with you. Caleb looked up. Absolutely not. Why? Because you don't know her. I just met her. That's how you get to know people. Ellie, she's nice. She's really nice. And she lives right there. Ellie pointed out the window like proximity was some kind of argument. Caleb rubbed his face. This was exactly what he didn't want. Complications, connections, people getting too close, and then leaving. We'll see. That means no. It means we'll see. Ellie crossed her arms, scowling, but she didn't argue. She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. Caleb followed her out to the car, and as they pulled out of the driveway, he saw Victoria standing on her porch, waving. Ellie waved back. Caleb kept his eyes on the road. 3 days passed. Caleb avoided Victoria as much as possible, which wasn't hard since he worked all day and she seemed to keep to herself. But Ellie talked about her constantly. Victoria had a garden. Victoria knew how to cook Thai food. Victoria had a dog once, but it died, and she still missed it. Caleb didn't ask how Ellie knew all this. He didn't want to know. On Saturday morning, he was in the garage trying to fix the lawnmower when he heard footsteps on the gravel. He looked up and saw Victoria standing there, hands in her pockets, looking annoyingly at ease. "Need help?" she asked. "No." "You sure? Because that looks like it's about to fall apart." Caleb wiped his hands on a rag. "I've got it." She nodded, but she didn't leave. She just stood there, watching him with that same quiet curiosity she'd had in the hardware store. "Your daughter's sweet," she said after a moment. "I know. She talks about you a lot." "Yeah, well, she talks a lot in general." Victoria smiled. "She said you don't like people." Caleb looked up. "She said that?" "Not in those words, but yeah." He went back to the lawnmower. "She's not wrong." "Why?" "Why what?" "Why don't you like people?" Caleb didn't answer. He didn't owe her an explanation, and he sure as hell wasn't about to give her one. Victoria crouched down beside him, inspecting the mower. "Carburetor's probably clogged." "I know." "You have a cleaning kit?" "Yeah." "Want me to grab it?" "No." She stood up, brushing off her jeans. "All right. Well, if you change your mind, I'm next door." She started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "Oh, and Caleb?" He looked up. "You're allowed to be friendly. It's not illegal." She left before he could respond. The festival was 2 weeks away, and Ellie would not shut up about it. She'd found a flyer at school and taped it to the fridge, circling the date in red marker like it was Christmas. "Everyone's going," she said one night at dinner. "That's great." "Can we go?" Caleb forked another bite of chicken. "We'll see." "You always say that." "Because it's true." "It means no." "It means we'll see." Ellie sighed dramatically and slumped in her chair. Caleb ignored her. He was good at ignoring things. But the flyer stayed on the fridge, and every time he walked past it, he felt a small, annoying pang of guilt. Ellie didn't ask for much. She didn't complain. She didn't push. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe she should. The next morning, Victoria knocked on the door. Caleb opened it, already regretting it. "Morning?" she said brightly. "Morning. I'm heading into town. Thought I'd see if you or Ellie needed anything." "We're fine." "You sure?" "I'm stopping by the bakery. They've got those cinnamon rolls Ellie was talking about." Caleb frowned. "When did she—" "Yesterday. She came over to help me plant some flowers." "Of course she did." Caleb sighed. "You don't have to do that." "I know. I want to." "Why?" Victoria tilted her head, studying him. "Because she's a good kid. And because you look like you could use a break." "I don't need a break." "Everyone needs a break, Caleb." She left before he could argue. Tut. The cinnamon rolls showed up an hour later, still warm, with a note that said, "For Ellie. And you, if you want." Caleb ate one standing at the counter, hating how good it was. Ellie came downstairs and saw the bag. Her face lit up. "Did Victoria bring these?" "Yeah." "She's so nice." Caleb didn't respond. Ellie took a roll and sat at the table, chewing thoughtfully. "She asked if we're going to the festival." "What'd you say?" "I said we were thinking about it." Caleb gave her a look. "Well, we are, right?" "Please, Dad." "Everyone's going, and Victoria's going. She said she'd save us a spot." Caleb rubbed his face. He was losing this argument, and he knew it. "We'll see." Ellie grinned. She knew what that meant this time. Nah, the festival was loud. Too loud. Caleb stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, watching the crowd mill around the booths and food trucks. Ellie had already run off with a girl from her class, leaving him alone in the chaos. He should have stayed home. "Caleb!" He turned and saw Victoria waving from across the lawn. She was wearing a sundress and sandals, looking completely at ease in a way that made him feel even more out of place. She walked over, grinning. "You made it." Ellie made me. Good. She's smarter than you. Caleb didn't argue. Victoria gestured toward the main stage. They're doing a kissing contest later. Longest kiss wins $500. That's ridiculous. It's fun. It's ridiculous, she laughed. You should enter. Absolutely not. Why not? Because I don't want to. Come on. When's the last time you did something spontaneous? Caleb looked at her. Never. Exactly. That's sad. I'm fine with it. Victoria shook her head, still smiling. You're impossible. She walked off toward the stage, and Caleb watched her go, feeling something uncomfortable settle in his chest. He didn't like her. He didn't like how easily she moved through the world, how she talked to people like it was effortless, how she looked at him like she could see through every wall he'd built. But Ellie liked her, and that was the problem. An hour later, Victoria was on stage, standing in a line with 9 other people. The kissing contest. Caleb stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, wondering how the hell this had happened. The MC, some guy in a Hawaiian shirt, was explaining the rules. Longest kiss wins. No breaks. No hands. Caleb rolled his eyes. Then he heard Ellie's voice. Dad, you should do it. He turned. She was standing next to him, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. No. Why not? Because it's stupid. It's not stupid. It's fun. And Victoria's up there. You should go with her. Caleb's stomach dropped. Absolutely not. Why? Because what? He didn't have an answer, at least not one he could say out loud. Ellie grabbed his hand. Please, Dad, just this once. Do something fun. And there it was. That look. The one he couldn't say no to. Caleb closed his eyes. He was going to regret this. Fine. Ellie cheered and dragged him toward the stage. The MC saw him coming and grinned. We've got another one. Come on up, buddy. Caleb climbed onto the stage, feeling every eye in the crowd on him. Victoria turned and saw him. Her eyebrows shot up. You're kidding. Don't, Caleb muttered. She smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. The MC paired them up, positioning them in front of the crowd. Caleb's heart was pounding. This was insane. This was the dumbest thing he'd ever done. All right, folks, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Victoria leaned in, and Caleb's world stopped. Her lips were soft, warm. The crowd was cheering, but he couldn't hear them. All he could feel was her hand on his jaw, her breath against his skin, the way she kissed him like it meant something. And then, without planning it, without thinking, Caleb kissed her back. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was raw and desperate and full of 6 years of silence and grief and loneliness he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it was there. The crowd roared. Victoria pulled back just an inch, her eyes searching his. She looked surprised, maybe even a little shaken. Caleb couldn't breathe. The MC was shouting something about a winner, but Caleb didn't hear it. He stepped back, his chest tight, his hands shaking. Ellie was clapping. Victoria was still staring at him. And Caleb turned and walked off the stage, disappearing into the crowd before anyone could stop him. Caleb didn't stop walking until he reached the parking lot. His hands were still shaking. His chest felt too tight, like someone had wrapped a band around his ribs and pulled. He leaned against the truck, gripping the door handle, trying to breathe. What the hell had he just done? Behind him, the festival continued. Music, laughter, the hum of a crowd having a good time. He could still hear the MC's voice crackling through the speakers, announcing the next event. Everything was normal. Everything except him. He could still feel her, the warmth of her mouth, the way her hand had settled against his jaw like it belonged there, the way she'd kissed him back, just for a second, before pulling away with that look in her eyes. Surprised, curious, maybe even a little rattled. Caleb pressed his palms against his face and exhaled hard. He'd spent 6 years keeping his distance from everyone. 6 years making sure nothing got too close, too real, too dangerous. And in one stupid, impulsive moment, he'd let all of it crack wide open. Dad? He dropped his hands and turned. Ellie was standing a few feet away, clutching a half-eaten funnel cake, her face uncertain. You okay? She asked. Yeah, fine. You left really fast. I just needed some air. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. She walked over and stood next to him, picking at the fried dough in her hands. "You won," she said quietly. "What?" "The contest. You and Victoria won." Caleb stared at her. "That's not $500. They announced it right after you left." He didn't know what to say to that. He didn't want the money. He didn't want to have won. He didn't want any of this. Ellie glanced up at him. "She looked for you." "Who?" "Victoria. She looked for you in the crowd. I think she wanted to talk to you." Caleb shook his head. "We should go." "Dad." "Ellie, please, let's just go." She frowned, but she followed him to the truck. They drove home in silence, the windows down, the warm evening air rushing past. Caleb kept his eyes on the road and tried not to think about the way Victoria had looked at him when she pulled back from the kiss, like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. When they got home, Ellie went straight to her room without a word. Caleb stood in the kitchen, staring at the same spot on the wall he always stared at when he didn't know what else to do. The house was too quiet. It always was. He thought about pouring a drink. He thought about calling Ray and making up some excuse to go back to work tomorrow, even though it was Sunday. He thought about a lot of things that would have been easier than sitting with the knot in his chest that wouldn't go away. Instead, he went upstairs, checked on Ellie, who was reading with her headphones on, and then stood in the hallway for a long time, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the space between one moment and the next. Eventually, he went to bed. He didn't sleep. He met. Sunday morning came too fast. Caleb woke up at 5:30 out of habit, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. His phone buzzed, a text from Ray. "Heard you won the kissing contest. Didn't know you had it in you." Caleb didn't respond. Another text came through a minute later. "Town's talking. You're famous." He turned the phone off. By the time the sun came up, he'd decided he was going to avoid Victoria for as long as humanly possible. It was a small plan, but it was something. He'd stay busy. He'd keep Ellie occupied. He'd make sure their paths didn't cross. That lasted about 3 hours. He was in the garage organizing tools he didn't need to organize when he heard footsteps on the driveway. He didn't look up. He already knew who it was. "Hey!" Victoria's voice, calm, even, not angry, not awkward, just there. Caleb kept his back to her, fiddling with a socket wrench. "Hey, you ran off pretty fast yesterday." "Had to get Ellie home." "She was fine. She stayed for another hour." Caleb didn't respond. Victoria stepped into the garage, her arms crossed. She was wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked normal, regular, like someone who hadn't just kissed him in front of half the town. "We won," she said. "I heard. $500. They want us to come pick it up at town hall." "You can have it. I don't need it." "Neither do I." She was quiet for a moment, watching him. Caleb could feel her eyes on him, and it made his skin itch. "You want to talk about it?" she asked. "No." "Okay." She didn't leave. Caleb finally turned around. "What do you want, Victoria?" "I want to know why you're acting like this." "Like what?" "Like you regret it." He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say. Because she was right. He did regret it. Not the kiss itself, but everything it had opened up inside him. The feelings he didn't want. The memories he couldn't handle. The fear that if he let her in, even a little, she'd leave just like everyone else. "It was a stupid contest," he said finally. "That's all." Victoria's expression didn't change. "You don't believe that." "Yeah, I do." "Then why did you kiss me like that?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I didn't." "You did, and you know it." She wasn't angry. She wasn't accusing him. She was just stating a fact, and somehow that made it worse. Caleb looked away. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to be honest." "I am being honest." "No, you're shutting down. There's a difference." He didn't respond. He couldn't. Victoria sighed and leaned against the workbench. "Look, I'm not trying to make this a big deal, but you can't just pretend it didn't happen." "Why not?" "Because it did, and because Ellie's watching." That stopped him. He looked at her, his chest tight. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means she saw you do something brave yesterday, something real, and now she's watching you run away from it." Caleb's hands clenched into fists. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You've been here 2 weeks. You don't know me. You don't know my daughter. You don't know anything. Victoria didn't flinch. You're right. I don't. But I know what it looks like when someone's scared. I'm not scared. Then what are you? Caleb didn't answer. He couldn't, because she was right, and he hated that she was right. Victoria pushed off the workbench and started toward the driveway. She stopped at the edge of the garage and looked back at him. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I'm not asking you to be anything you're not. I just think you're more than you're letting yourself be. She left. Caleb stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she'd been, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under him. Ellie didn't bring it up at dinner. She didn't bring it up the next morning either. But Caleb could feel it between them, the unspoken question, the weight of something she wanted to say but didn't know how. He dropped her off at school and went to work, where Ray immediately cornered him. So, Ray said, grinning like an idiot, you and the neighbor. Don't. Come on, it's all anyone's talking about. That's their problem. Ray leaned against the counter, still grinning. You know, I've known you for 5 years, and I've never seen you so much as smile at a woman. And then you go and win a kissing contest in front of the whole town. It wasn't a big deal. Looked like a big deal to me. Caleb grabbed a box cutter and started breaking down a shipment. Drop it, Ray. All right, all right. Ray held up his hands. But for the record, I think it's good. You've been living like a hermit. Maybe this'll shake things up a little. I don't need things shaken up. Yeah, you do. Caleb didn't respond. He focused on the boxes, the repetitive motion of slicing through tape and cardboard, the satisfying thunk of flattened boxes hitting the floor. It was easier than thinking, but thinking found him anyway. Up that dicky. That night, Ellie set the table without being asked. She poured herself a glass of water and sat down, her homework spread out in front of her. Caleb put dinner on the table, spaghetti again because it was easy, and sat across from her. They ate in silence for a while. Then Ellie spoke. Victoria's really nice. Caleb looked up. Yeah, you've said that. She asked if I wanted to come over and help her bake cookies next weekend. What'd you say? I said I'd ask you. Caleb set his fork down. Ellie, I know you don't like her. I didn't say that. You don't have to. I can tell. He stared at her. She was watching him with that same serious expression she always had, the one that made her seem older than she was. I don't not like her, Caleb said carefully. Then why do you avoid her? I'm not avoiding her. Dad, he sighed. It's complicated. Why? Because it is. That's not an answer. She was right. It wasn't. But it was the only one he had. Ellie picked up her fork and pushed spaghetti around her plate. Mom would have liked her. Caleb's chest tightened. She would have. She liked people. She would have gone over and introduced herself the first day. Caleb didn't say anything. He couldn't. Ellie looked at him, her eyes serious. I miss her. I know. Do you? Yeah. Every day. She nodded, then went back to her homework. Caleb sat there, his appetite gone, staring at his plate and feeling like he was drowning. 2 days passed. Caleb kept his head down, worked long hours, and avoided the front windows. He saw Victoria once, getting her mail, her hair tied up in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and a tank top. But he didn't wave. She didn't either. On Wednesday, Ellie came home from school with an envelope. She handed it to Caleb without a word. Inside was a check for $500, made out to him. There was a note attached in neat handwriting. Your half. Use it for something fun. Caleb stared at it for a long time. Then he folded it, put it in a drawer, and didn't think about it again. At least he tried not to. Friday afternoon, Caleb was at the hardware store when a woman came in asking about garden supplies. He helped her find what she needed, rang her up, and was halfway through bagging her purchases when she smiled at him. You're the guy from the kissing contest, aren't you? Caleb froze. I thought so. That was amazing. Everyone's still talking about it. Great. Is she your girlfriend, the woman you kissed? No. Oh. The woman looked disappointed. Well, you two made a cute couple. You should ask her out. Caleb handed her the bag. Have a nice day. The woman left, still smiling. Caleb rubbed his face and wondered if it was possible to disappear entirely. Ray appeared from the back room, laughing. That's the third person this week. I hate this town. You love this town. I tolerate this town. Ray grinned. You know, she's got a point. You should ask Victoria out. I'm not asking anyone out. Why not? Because I don't want to. Or because you're scared. Caleb shot him a look. You sound like her. Maybe we're both right. Caleb didn't respond. He went back to work, but the conversation stuck with him. It followed him home, sat next to him at dinner, and kept him awake that night. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was scared. But being scared had kept him safe for 6 years. It had kept Ellie safe. And he wasn't about to throw that away for someone he barely knew. Even if she made him feel things he'd forgotten he could feel. Saturday morning, Ellie knocked on his bedroom door. Dad? Caleb rolled over, squinting at the clock. 7:30. What? Victoria's outside. He sat up. What? She's outside. On the porch. She said she wants to talk to you. Caleb rubbed his face. Tell her I'm busy. You're in bed. Tell her I'm sleeping. Ellie crossed her arms. Dad, don't be a jerk. He stared at her. When had she gotten so bold? Fine, he muttered. Give me a minute. Ellie left. Caleb got dressed, splashed water on his face, and went downstairs. Through the window, he could see Victoria sitting on the porch steps, her arms resting on her knees, looking out at the lake. He opened the door and stepped outside. She didn't turn around. Morning, he said. Morning. He sat down next to her, leaving a careful distance between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. The lake was calm, the water reflecting the pale morning sky. I'm not good at this, Caleb said finally. At what? People. Talking. Any of it. Victoria glanced at him. I've noticed. I'm trying to tell you that I don't know what you want from me. I don't want anything from you. Then why are you here? She was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. Because I like you. And I like Ellie. And I think you're both lonely, even if you won't admit it. Caleb looked down at his hands. I'm not lonely. You are. You're just used to it. He didn't argue. He didn't have the energy. Victoria shifted, turning to face him. Look, I'm not trying to force my way into your life, but I'm not going to apologize for being friendly or for kissing you, even if it was just a stupid contest. Caleb met her eyes. It wasn't just a contest. I know. Then why did you do it? She smiled, just a little, because I wanted to see what you'd do. And? You surprised me. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. He looked away, his chest tight again. Victoria stood up, brushing off her jeans. I meant what I said in the note. Use the money for something fun. Take Ellie somewhere. Do something that makes you feel alive. She started down the steps, then paused. And Caleb? He looked up. Stop punishing yourself for wanting things. It's not as dangerous as you think. She walked back to her house, leaving him sitting there on the porch, staring after her. That afternoon, Caleb took Ellie into town. They went to the bookstore where she spent an hour browsing the shelves and came out with 3 new books. Then they got ice cream and sat by the lake, watching the ducks. Ellie was quiet, which wasn't unusual, but there was something different about it today. She seemed thoughtful. Dad? She said eventually. Yeah? Do you like Victoria? Caleb almost choked on his ice cream. What? Do you like her? Like her? Ellie, it's okay if you do. He looked at her. She was watching him with those serious eyes again, the ones that saw too much. It's complicated, he said. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Why is it complicated? Caleb set his ice cream down. Because I don't know if I'm ready for it to be anything else. Ellie tilted her head. Ready for what? For someone new, for things to change. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think Mom would want you to be happy. Caleb's throat tightened. Yeah, maybe. She wouldn't want you to be alone forever. I'm not alone. I've got you. That's not the same. She was right. Again. Caleb looked out at the lake, at the water that didn't freeze anymore, at the sky that was too big and too empty. And for the first time in 6 years, he let himself wonder what it would be like to stop running from everything that scared him. That night, after Ellie went to bed, Caleb sat on the porch with a beer he wasn't drinking. The lights were on next door. He could see Victoria moving around inside, the shape of her silhouette against the curtains. He thought about what she'd said, about being lonely, about punishing himself, about wanting things. She was wrong. She had to be. But what if she wasn't? Caleb stood up, left the beer on the step, and walked across the yard. He knocked on her door before he could talk himself out of it. Victoria opened it, surprised. "Caleb, can we talk?" She stepped aside. "Yeah, come in." The inside of her house was warm and lived in, with books on the shelves and plants on the windowsills. It felt like someone actually lived there, not just existed. Caleb stood in the middle of the living room, his hands in his pockets. Victoria closed the door and leaned against it, waiting. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Do what?" "This, whatever this is." "Okay." "I'm serious. I don't know how to be around someone without screwing it up." Victoria crossed her arms. "You're not screwing anything up. Yet," she smiled. "You're really good at catastrophizing. You know that?" "I'm good at being realistic." "There's a difference." Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "I kissed you because I wanted to. Not because of the contest. Not because Ellie pushed me into it. Because I wanted to." Victoria's expression softened. "I know. And it scared the hell out of me." "I know that too." He looked at her. "I don't know what happens next." "Neither do I." "That doesn't bother you?" She shook her head. "No, it's kind of the point." Caleb stared at her, trying to understand how someone could be so comfortable with uncertainty. It was the exact opposite of everything he'd built his life around. "I can't promise you anything," he said quietly. "I'm not asking you to." "I'm a mess." "So am I. I've got a kid. I like your kid. I don't know if I'm ready for this." Victoria pushed off the door and walked over to him. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that he could see the faint scar on her collarbone, the freckles on her shoulders. "Caleb," she said gently, "I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking you to change your whole life. I'm just asking you to stop running away every time something feels real." He swallowed hard. "What if I can't?" "Then I'll wait." "Why?" She smiled. "Because I think you're worth it." Caleb didn't know what to say. He'd spent 6 years convinced that he wasn't worth anything to anyone except Ellie. And now here was this woman, standing in front of him, telling him the exact opposite. It should have made him feel better. Instead, it terrified him. "I should go," he said. Victoria nodded. "Okay." He turned toward the door, then stopped. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me yet." He left before she could respond. The next week passed in a blur. Caleb went to work, came home, made dinner, helped Ellie with her homework. Normal. Routine. Safe. But something had shifted. He caught himself looking out the window more often, watching for Victoria. He noticed when she left for the day, when she came back, when her lights turned on at night. He told himself it didn't mean anything. He told himself he was just being observant. He was a terrible liar. Ellie noticed too. She didn't say anything, but she smiled more. She seemed lighter, like she was carrying less weight. Caleb didn't know if that was because of Victoria or because of him, but either way, it made him feel like maybe he was doing something right for once. On Thursday, Victoria came over with a casserole. "I made too much," she said when Caleb opened the door. "Thought you guys might want some." Caleb looked at the dish in her hands. It smelled amazing. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. I wanted to." Ellie appeared behind him. "Is that lasagna?" Victoria grinned. "Yeah." "Can she stay for dinner?" Caleb opened his mouth to say no, but Victoria was already looking at him with that same calm, patient expression she always had, and Ellie was practically bouncing on her toes, and he couldn't find a good reason to refuse. "Sure," he said. Ellie cheered and grabbed the casserole, disappearing into the kitchen. Victoria stepped inside, looking around like she was seeing the place for the first time. "Nice house," she said. "It's fine. You always do that, you know." "Do what?" "Downplay everything." Caleb shrugged. "It's just a house." "It's a home." He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. He led her into the kitchen, where Ellie was already setting the table and chattering about school. Victoria sat down and listened, asking questions, laughing at Ellie's stories, fitting into the space like she'd always been there. Caleb watched from the counter, slicing bread he didn't need to slice, and felt something loosen in his chest, something he'd been holding on to for too long. Dinner was easy. Too easy. Victoria and Ellie talked about books and animals and some TV show Caleb had never heard of. He chimed in when it made sense, but mostly he just listened, letting their voices fill the silence he'd gotten so used to. After they ate, Ellie helped clear the table, then asked if she could show Victoria her room. Victoria glanced at Caleb. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. They disappeared upstairs and Caleb stood at the sink, washing dishes and trying not to think too hard about how normal this felt. How right. When Victoria came back down 20 minutes later, Ellie was still upstairs reading. She's sweet, Victoria said, leaning against the counter. Yeah, she is. She talks about you a lot. I know. She's proud of you. Caleb looked up, surprised. Why? Because you're her dad, and because you've done a good job even if you don't think so. Caleb turned off the water and dried his hands. I don't know about that. I do. She said it so simply, like it was a fact, like there was no question. Caleb set the towel down and looked at her. Why do you do that? Do what? Say things like that, like you know me. Because I'm starting to. You've been here 3 weeks. Long enough to see what kind of person you are. And what kind is that? Victoria smiled. The kind who's scared of being happy. Caleb's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me I'm wrong. He couldn't. Victoria stepped closer, her voice soft. Caleb, I'm not trying to fix you. I'm not trying to change you. I'm just trying to be here. And I think you could use someone who is. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that he didn't need anyone, that he was fine on his own. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just stood there, staring at her, feeling the walls he'd built start to crack. I don't know how to do this, he said again. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Then stop trying to figure it out. Just let it happen. Caleb shook his head. It's not that simple. Why not? Because the last time I let something happen, I lost everything. The words came out before he could stop them. Victoria's expression shifted, softer, sadder. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't. I don't want pity. It's not pity, it's empathy. Caleb turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. I can't go through that again. You won't. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But you can't spend the rest of your life waiting for the worst thing to happen. He didn't respond. He didn't trust himself to. Victoria sighed and grabbed her jacket from the chair. I should go. Caleb nodded. She started toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said, I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to. She left. Caleb stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the empty space where she'd been, wondering how someone he barely knew had managed to get so far under his skin. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. Victoria's words, Ellie's words, his own. He thought about his wife, about the accident, about the day everything changed and the years that followed, when he'd convinced himself that the only way to survive was to shut everything out. But Ellie was growing up, and she was watching him, learning from him. And what was he teaching her? That love was too dangerous? That caring about people only led to pain? He didn't want that for her. He didn't want her to grow up afraid. But he didn't know how to stop being afraid himself. The answer came at 2 a.m, standing in Ellie's doorway, watching her sleep. She was curled up with that rabbit she wouldn't let go of, her face peaceful in a way it never was during the day. She looked so small, so fragile. And Caleb realized with a sharp, painful clarity that he'd been so busy protecting her from loss that he'd forgotten to show her what it meant to actually live. He closed her door softly and went back downstairs. The house was dark except for the glow from the porch light next door. Victoria's car was in the driveway. Her kitchen light was on. Caleb grabbed his jacket and walked across the yard before he could change his mind. He knocked, waited. The light in the hallway flicked on, And then Victoria opened the door wearing an oversized sweatshirt and pajama pants, her hair messy, her expression confused. "Caleb, it's 2 in the morning." "I know. Is everything okay?" "No. Yeah, I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside without hesitation. He walked into the living room and stood there, hands in his pockets, feeling like an idiot but unable to stop now that he'd started. Victoria closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed, waiting. "I've been thinking," Caleb said. "Okay. About what you said. About me being scared." "And? You're right. I am scared. I've been scared for 6 years, and I don't know how to not be scared anymore." Victoria didn't say anything. She just watched him, her expression soft but steady. Caleb exhaled hard. "My wife died in a car accident. Some guy ran a red light and hit her on the passenger side. She was gone before the ambulance even got there. Ellie was 3. She doesn't remember much about her, and sometimes I think that's worse than if she did." Victoria's face changed. Not pity, exactly, but something close to it. Understanding, maybe. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Everyone's sorry. That's what they all say. But sorry doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring her back. It doesn't make it easier. It just reminds you that everyone knows you're broken." "You're not broken." "Yeah, I am. I've been broken for a long time." He looked down at his hands. "And I told myself that was fine, that I could live with it, that as long as Ellie was okay, nothing else mattered. But I don't think I can do it anymore. I don't think I want to." Victoria took a step forward. "What changed?" "You did." She stopped, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know how," Caleb continued. "I don't know why. But you walked into my life and turned everything upside down, and now I can't stop thinking about what it would be like if I let myself actually feel something again." "And what would it be like?" "Terrifying." Victoria smiled, just a little. "Probably, but also maybe worth it." He met her eyes. "I don't know how to do this, Victoria. I don't know how to be the kind of person who takes risks or opens up, or any of that. But I want to try. If you'll let me." She closed the distance between them, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "You don't have to be perfect, Caleb. You just have to be willing." "I am. I think. I'm trying to be. That's enough." She said it so simply, like it was obvious, like he didn't have to prove anything or be anything other than what he was. And something in Caleb's chest cracked open completely. He kissed her. Not like the contest, not in front of a crowd with people cheering, just the two of them in her living room at 2 in the morning, quiet and real and terrifying in all the best ways. Victoria kissed him back, her hand sliding up to his jaw, her touch gentle but sure. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "You're getting better at that," she said. "At what?" "Letting yourself want things." Caleb huffed a quiet laugh. "Don't get used to it." Too late. He stayed for another hour. They sat on her couch and talked about nothing important. Books she'd read, places she'd been, stupid things Ellie had said that week. It felt normal, easy, like something he could get used to if he let himself. When he finally left, the sky was starting to lighten. He walked back across the yard, feeling lighter than he had in years. Ellie was still asleep when he checked on her. He stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her breathe, and made a promise to himself that he was going to be better. Not perfect, just better. The next morning, Ellie noticed immediately. "You're smiling," she said over breakfast. Caleb looked up from his coffee. "What?" "You're smiling. You never smile in the morning." "I smile." "Not like that." He tried to rearrange his face into something more neutral, but it didn't work. Ellie grinned. "Did something happen with Victoria?" "Why would you ask that?" "Because you're being weird." "I'm not being weird." "You are. You're definitely being weird." Caleb shook his head, but he didn't argue. There was no point. Ellie saw everything. "She's coming over later," Ellie said casually. "What?" "Victoria. She texted me. We're making cookies, remember?" Caleb had completely forgotten. "Right, yeah. You should help." "I don't bake." "You could learn." He looked at his daughter, at the hopeful expression on her face, and felt something shift again. "Yeah, maybe I could." Ellie's grin widened. "This is going to be fun. Damn." Victoria showed up at 3 with a bag of ingredients and a smile that made Caleb's chest tighten in a way that was starting to feel familiar. Ellie practically dragged her into the kitchen, chattering about the recipe she'd found online, and Caleb stood off to the side, watching them work. "You're not going to help?" Victoria asked, glancing over her shoulder. "I told you, I don't bake." "Then learn." She said it the same way she said everything. Simple, straightforward, like it wasn't a big deal. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was the one making it complicated. Caleb stepped up to the counter. "What do I do?" Ellie handed him a mixing bowl. "Measure the flour." "How much?" "2 cups." He measured, badly. Flour went everywhere. Ellie laughed. Victoria didn't say anything, but he could see her trying not to smile. "You're terrible at this," Ellie said. "I know. But you're trying." "Yeah, I am." Victoria caught his eye and smiled, and Caleb felt something warm settle in his chest. They spent the next 2 hours making cookies. Caleb burned the first batch. Ellie dropped an entire egg on the floor. Victoria saved the second batch just in time. By the end of it, the kitchen was a disaster, but they had 3 dozen cookies and Ellie was laughing harder than Caleb had heard in months. "These are terrible," Ellie said, biting into one. "They're not that bad," Victoria said. "They're pretty bad," Caleb agreed. Ellie grinned. "But we made them, so they're still good." Caleb looked at his daughter, then at Victoria, and realized she was right. They were still good. After Ellie went to bed, Victoria stayed. They sat on the porch with mugs of tea Caleb had made and didn't drink, watching the lake turn silver in the moonlight. "Thank you," Caleb said. "For what?" "For this, for today, for not giving up on me." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "You keep thanking me for things that don't need thanking. I don't know what else to do." "You could just accept that people care about you without needing a reason." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "That's harder than it sounds." "I know." They sat in silence for a while. Then Victoria spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "What scares you the most?" "About this. About us." Caleb stared out at the water. "That I'll get used to it, that I'll let myself care, and then something will happen. And I'll lose you too." "And what if nothing happens?" "What?" "What if nothing bad happens? What if we just get to be happy?" Caleb turned to look at her. "I don't know if I believe in that anymore." "Why not?" "Because every time I've been happy, something's taken it away." Victoria set her mug down and turned to face him. "Caleb, I can't promise you that nothing bad will ever happen. I can't promise that we'll work out or that everything will be perfect. But I can promise that I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to. And I can promise that you deserve to be happy, even if you don't believe it yet." He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her she was wrong. But he couldn't. "I'm going to mess this up," he said quietly. "Probably." "You're okay with that?" "Everyone messes things up. The question is whether you're willing to fix them." Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who wasn't asking him to be perfect. Someone who was willing to stick around even when he didn't have all the answers. "I'm willing," he said. Victoria smiled. "Good." The weeks that followed were strange. Good, but strange. Caleb wasn't used to someone being around this much. Victoria came over for dinner twice a week. She helped Ellie with a science project. She fixed the lawnmower Caleb had been avoiding for months. She fit into their lives so easily it almost felt wrong. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt right. And that was the part that scared him. One Saturday, Victoria invited them to her place for lunch. Caleb hesitated, but Ellie was already out the door before he could think of an excuse. They ate sandwiches on Victoria's back porch, overlooking the lake, and talked about nothing important. "This is nice," Ellie said, her mouth full. "Don't talk with your mouth full," Caleb said automatically. Ellie swallowed. "This is nice." Victoria laughed. "I'm glad you think so. Can we do this more?" "Ellie?" Caleb started. "What?" "I'm just asking." Victoria glanced at Caleb, then at Ellie. "We can do this as much as your dad's comfortable with." Ellie looked at Caleb expectantly. He sighed. "Yeah, we can do this more." Ellie beamed. After lunch, Ellie wandered down to the water to skip stones, leaving Caleb and Victoria alone on the porch. "You're good with her," Caleb said. "She's easy to be good with." She doesn't let a lot of people in. Neither do you. Caleb smiled despite himself. Fair point. Victoria leaned back in her chair, watching Ellie. She talks about you a lot, you know. Yeah? Yeah, she's proud of you. She thinks you're the best dad in the world. Caleb's chest tightened. I'm not. You are to her. That's what matters. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. They sat in comfortable silence, and for the first time in a long time, Caleb didn't feel the need to fill it. Quit. But the fear didn't go away. It just shifted, changed shape, became something quieter, but no less persistent. It came back one night when Ellie got sick. Nothing serious, just a stomach bug, but Caleb couldn't sleep. He sat in the hallway outside her room, listening to her breathe, and felt the old panic creeping back in. What if it wasn't just a stomach bug? What if it was something worse? What if he lost her too? By the time the sun came up, he was exhausted. Ellie was fine. She woke up feeling better and asked for toast, but Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something dangerous. Victoria came over that afternoon. She took one look at him and frowned. You okay? Yeah, fine. You don't look fine. Ellie was sick. Is she okay now? Yeah, she's fine. It was nothing. Victoria stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. But you're not fine. Caleb rubbed his face. I'm just tired. Caleb, I'm fine, Victoria. Really. She didn't believe him, he could tell, but she didn't push. Okay, she said quietly. But if you need to talk, I'm here. I know. She left. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her walk back to her house, and felt the walls he'd been trying to tear down start to rebuild themselves. The next few days were hard. Caleb pulled back without meaning to. He worked late. He avoided Victoria's texts. He told himself he was just busy, but he knew the truth. He was scared. And when he got scared, he ran. Ellie noticed. Why isn't Victoria coming over anymore? She asked one night at dinner. She is. She's just busy. No, she's not. You're avoiding her. Caleb looked up. I'm not avoiding anyone. Yes, you are. You always do this. Do what? Push people away when you get scared. Caleb set his fork down. Ellie, I'm not stupid, Dad. I know you're scared. But Victoria's not going anywhere. She told me. When did she tell you that? Last week. When we were making cookies, she said she likes us. She said she's not leaving. Caleb's throat tightened. So why are you pushing her away? He didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. Ellie stood up, her plate half finished. I'm going to bed. Ellie, wait. But she was already gone. Caleb sat at the table alone, staring at his plate, and felt like the worst person in the world. That night he couldn't sleep again. He sat on the porch, the same spot where he'd sat with Victoria a dozen times, and stared at the dark lake. He thought about his wife, about the accident, about the moment his entire world had collapsed, and the years that followed when he'd convinced himself that the only way to survive was to never let anyone get close again. But he'd let Victoria in. He'd let himself care. And now the thought of losing her, of losing anyone else, was unbearable. The porch light next door flicked on. Victoria stepped outside, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She saw him and walked over without asking. Can't sleep, she said. Never can? She sat down next to him, not touching, just there. They sat in silence for a while. Ellie thinks I'm pushing you away, Caleb said finally. Are you? Yeah. Why? Because I'm scared. Of what? Of losing you. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You can't lose something you never let yourself have. Caleb looked at her. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're so busy protecting yourself from loss that you're missing out on everything in between. And that's not fair to you, or to me, or to Ellie. I know. Then stop. It's not that easy. Yes, it is. You just decide to stop. Caleb shook his head. You don't understand. Then help me understand. He took a breath, let it out slow. When my wife died, I promised myself I'd never let anything hurt like that again. And the only way to do that was to keep everyone at a distance, to not care too much, to not feel too much. And how's that working out for you? It's not, but it's safe. Victoria turned to face him fully. Safe isn't the same as happy, Caleb. And I don't think you want to spend the rest of your life just being safe. He didn't. She was right. But admitting that felt like stepping off a cliff. I don't know how to do this, he said again. You keep saying that, and I keep telling you the same thing. You don't have to know how, you just have to try. Caleb looked at her, at the way she was watching him, patient and steady and not going anywhere, and felt something break open inside him. I don't want to lose you, he said quietly. You won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that I'm here now, and that's enough. Caleb reached out and took her hand. She laced her fingers through his, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe again. The next morning, Caleb apologized to Ellie. I'm sorry, he said over breakfast, for pulling away, for being scared, for all of it. Ellie looked up from her cereal. Are you going to stop? I'm going to try. Good. She went back to eating, then paused. Does this mean Victoria can come over again? Yeah, if she wants to. She wants to. Caleb smiled. Yeah, I think she does. That weekend, the three of them went hiking. It was Victoria's idea, some trails she'd found that overlooked the lake. Caleb wasn't thrilled about it, but Ellie was excited, so he went along. The trail was harder than he expected, steep and rocky and full of roots that seemed designed to trip him. Ellie ran ahead, full of energy, while Caleb struggled to keep up. You okay back there? Victoria called. Fine, Caleb lied. She laughed and slowed down to walk beside him. You're out of shape. I'm aware. When's the last time you did something like this? Never. Really? Really. I'm a stay inside and fix things kind of person. Well, you're doing great for someone who's never hiked before. I'm dying. You're fine. They reached the top an hour later. The view was worth it. Miles of forest stretching out to the lake, the water shimmering in the afternoon sun. Ellie stood at the edge, arms spread wide, grinning like she'd conquered the world. This is amazing, she shouted. Caleb stood next to Victoria, catching his breath. Yeah, it is. Victoria glanced at him. You're smiling. So? So you should do it more often. He looked at her. She was watching him with that same steady expression she always had, and he realized she was right. He should smile more. He should do a lot of things more. Thanks, he said. For what? For dragging me up here. Any time. They stayed at the top for an hour, eating sandwiches and watching the clouds move across the sky. Ellie talked non-stop about everything and nothing, and Caleb just listened, feeling something settle inside him that he hadn't felt in years. Peace. On the way back down, Ellie ran ahead again, leaving Caleb and Victoria alone on the trail. She's happy, Victoria said. Yeah, she is. So are you. Caleb glanced at her. You think so? I know so. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because she was right. He was happy. Not all the time, not perfectly, but enough. I'm glad you moved here, he said. Victoria smiled. Me too. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Caleb spoke again. I'm still scared, you know. I know. But I'm trying not to let it run my life anymore. That's all anyone can do. He looked at her, at the way the sunlight caught in her hair, at the easy confidence in the way she moved, and he realized that maybe, just maybe, he could do this. He could let someone in. He could take the risk. Victoria? Yeah? I'm glad you're here. She reached out and took his hand. I'm glad I'm here too. That night, after Ellie went to bed, Caleb and Victoria sat on the porch again. It was becoming a habit, one he didn't mind. Can I ask you something? Caleb said. Sure. Why did you leave? Your company, your life, all of it. Why did you come here? Victoria was quiet for a moment, staring out at the lake. Because I was tired. Tired of pretending I had it all together. Tired of being who everyone expected me to be. I spent 10 years building something that was supposed to make me happy. And when I finally got there, I realized I hated it. So you just walked away? Yeah, I gave it to my brother and left. Best decision I ever made. Do you miss it? Sometimes, but not as much as I thought I would. She looked at him. What about you? Do you miss your old life? Caleb thought about it. No, I miss my wife, but the life we had, that's gone. And I don't think I'd want it back even if I could have it. Why not? Because I'm different now. Ellie's different, and trying to go back would just be pretending. Victoria nodded. I get that. They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Victoria stood up, stretching. I should go. It's late. Caleb stood too. Yeah, okay. She started down the steps, then turned back. Caleb? Yeah? This thing we're doing? I like it. A lot. He smiled. Yeah, me too. She left, and Caleb stood on the porch, watching her walk back to her house, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The hope lasted exactly 3 weeks before everything fell apart. It started small. A phone call from Ellie's school saying she'd gotten into a fight with another girl. When Caleb picked her up, she wouldn't talk about it. She just sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, staring out the window with her jaw set tight. You want to tell me what happened? Caleb asked. No. Ellie, I don't want to talk about it. He let it go. He figured she'd tell him when she was ready, but she didn't. She went straight to her room when they got home and stayed there for the rest of the evening. When he knocked on her door to tell her dinner was ready, she said she wasn't hungry. Victoria texted him that night asking if everything was okay. Caleb told her it was fine. Another lie. He was getting good at those again. The next day, Ellie's teacher called. The fight had been about Ellie's mom. Some kid had said something stupid, and Ellie had shoved her. It wasn't the first time Ellie had reacted badly when someone brought up her mother, but it was the first time she'd gotten physical. Caleb tried to talk to her about it that evening. Elle, we need to discuss what happened at school. I already got detention. What else do you want? I want to know why you pushed that girl. Because she was being a jerk. What did she say? Ellie's face hardened. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. She's stupid. I don't care what she thinks. But Caleb could see it in her eyes. She did care. She cared a lot. Ellie, you can't go around pushing people just because they say things you don't like. Why not? You push people away all the time. The words hit harder than they should have. Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it. She wasn't wrong. That's different, he said finally. How? It just is. That's not an answer. She stormed upstairs before he could respond. Caleb stood in the kitchen, feeling like he'd just lost a fight he didn't know he was in. Sit. Victoria came over the next afternoon. Caleb was in the garage, pretending to work on something that didn't need fixing. She leaned against the door frame, watching him. Ellie told me what happened, she said. Yeah? What'd she say? That some girl said her mom didn't love her because she died. Caleb's hand stilled on the wrench he was holding. She said that? Yeah. He set the wrench down and exhaled hard. I didn't know. She didn't want to tell you. Why not? Because she thought you'd be upset. Caleb rubbed his face. Of course I'm upset. That's a horrible thing to say to a kid. I know, but Ellie thinks you're upset with her, not with the other girl. He looked at Victoria. I'm not upset with her. Then tell her that. I tried. She won't talk to me. Then try harder. Victoria said it gently, but there was an edge to it. She wasn't wrong. He hadn't tried hard enough. He'd let Ellie shut him out because it was easier than pushing. I don't know how to talk to her about this stuff, Caleb said quietly. About her mom? Yeah. Why not? Because I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make it better. Victoria walked into the garage and sat on the workbench. You don't have to make it better, you just have to be there. That's not enough. It is for her. Caleb wanted to believe that, but he'd spent so long thinking he had to have all the answers, had to fix everything, that just being there felt inadequate. What if I say the wrong thing? He asked. Then you say the wrong thing, but at least you said something. She made it sound so simple. Maybe it was. Maybe he was the one making it complicated. That night, Caleb knocked on Ellie's door. Go away, she said. Not a chance. He opened the door. Ellie was on her bed, the rabbit clutched to her chest, her face red like she'd been crying. Caleb's chest tightened. He sat on the edge of the bed, keeping some distance between them. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For not asking what that girl said. For not making it clear that I'm not mad at you. Ellie didn't look at him. You're always mad at something. I know, and I'm working on that. But I'm not mad at you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said Mom didn't love me, because if she did, she wouldn't have left. Caleb felt something break inside him. Ellie, I know it's not true. I know Mom didn't leave on purpose, but sometimes I wonder if she loved me enough. She did. She loved you more than anything. Then why do I barely remember her? Caleb didn't have an answer for that. He'd asked himself the same question 1,000 times. Why couldn't Ellie remember? Why did she only have fragments, a laugh, a smell, a vague sense of warmth that felt more like a dream than a memory? I don't know, he said finally. But I remember her, and I can tell you about her whenever you want. You never talk about her. I know, and that's my fault. I thought it would be easier if we didn't, but I was wrong. Ellie looked at him, her eyes still wet. What was she like? Caleb took a breath. He hadn't talked about his wife in years. Not really, but Ellie deserved to know. She was funny. She had this laugh that was way too loud for how small she was. And she was stubborn, like you. Ellie almost smiled. She loved reading, Caleb continued. She'd stay up till 2 in the morning finishing a book, and then she'd wake me up to tell me about it, even though I had work in the morning. That sounds annoying. It was, but I loved it anyway. He paused. She loved you so much, Elle. From the moment you were born, she couldn't stop talking about you. She had all these plans for what you'd do together when you got older. She wanted to teach you how to bake, how to garden, how to stand up for yourself. Did she teach me any of that? Some. You were only 3 when she died, but she would have taught you everything if she'd had the chance. Ellie was quiet, processing. Then she said, Do you still love her? Yeah, I always will. Does that mean you can't love anyone else? Caleb looked at his daughter, at the hope and worry in her eyes, and realized what she was really asking. No, he said, it doesn't mean that. So you love Victoria? He hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud made it real, made it something he couldn't take back. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I do. Ellie smiled, a real smile this time. Good. She loves you too. How do you know? Because I asked her. Caleb blinked. You asked her? Yeah, last week. She said she did. He didn't know what to say to that. His 9-year-old daughter had more courage than he did. Are you okay with that? He asked. With what? With me loving someone who's not your mom. Ellie thought about it. Yeah, I think Mom would be okay with it too. Caleb's throat tightened. He pulled Ellie into a hug, and she didn't pull away. I'm sorry I pushed you away, he said. It's okay. Just don't do it again. I'll try. Good. The next morning felt lighter. Ellie came downstairs without being called, ate breakfast without complaint, and even joked about the burned toast Caleb had made. It felt normal. Good. But the peace didn't last. Caleb was at work when his phone rang. The number wasn't one he recognized, but he answered anyway. Mr. Ward? Yeah? This is Dr. Patel from Lakeview Medical. I'm calling about your father. Caleb's stomach dropped. What about him? He's been admitted. He had a heart attack early this morning. He's stable now, but we need you to come down as soon as possible. Caleb's mind went blank. His father. A heart attack. Stable. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He hung up and stared at the phone. His father. He hadn't spoken to his father in 3 years. Not since the argument, not since his dad had told him he was ruining Ellie's life by keeping her isolated, and Caleb had told him to mind his own business, and now he was in the hospital. Ray appeared beside him. You okay? I need to go. What happened? My dad. He had a heart attack. Ray's expression shifted. Go. I've got the store. Caleb didn't argue. He grabbed his keys and left. The hospital was 20 minutes away, but it felt like hours. Caleb's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. He tried to focus on the road, on breathing, on anything but the panic rising in his chest. When he got to the hospital, a nurse directed him to the cardiac unit. His father was in a room at the end of the hall, hooked up to machines, looking smaller than Caleb remembered. An older man, gray hair, thin, tired. Caleb stood in the doorway, not sure what to do. His father opened his eyes and saw him. Caleb. Hey, Dad. You came. Yeah, of course I came. His father smiled weakly. I wasn't sure you would. Caleb stepped into the room and sat in the chair next to the bed. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. The doctor said you're stable. For now. They sat in silence. It was the same silence that had filled every conversation they'd had for the past 10 years. Awkward. Heavy. Full of things neither of them knew how to say. I'm sorry, his father said finally. Caleb looked up. For what? For what I said. 3 years ago. About Ellie. About you. Dad, I was wrong. You're doing a good job with her. Better than I did with you. Caleb didn't know what to say. His father had never apologized for anything in his life. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. About the things I should have said and didn't. And I don't want to leave without saying them. You're not leaving. The doctor said you're stable. I'm 73, Caleb. Stable doesn't mean forever. Caleb's throat tightened. He looked away, staring at the machines beeping steadily beside the bed. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Do what? This. Forgive you. Move on. Any of it. His father nodded. I don't blame you. I wasn't a good dad. You did your best. My best wasn't good enough. Caleb wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because it was true. His father had been distant, critical, impossible to please, and Caleb had spent his entire life trying to be different, trying not to make the same mistakes. I'm trying to be better, Caleb said, with Ellie. I'm trying not to be like you. His father smiled sadly. Good. You should be. They sat in silence again, but this time it felt different, less heavy, more honest. There's someone, Caleb said eventually. Someone. A woman. She moved in next door. Her name's Victoria. His father's eyebrows raised. Yeah? Yeah, I think I love her. Does she love you? She says she does. Then what's the problem? I'm scared. Of what? Of losing her. Of messing it up. Of everything. His father nodded slowly. You know what I regret most? What? Not taking more risks. I spent my whole life playing it safe, and all it got me was alone. He looked at Caleb. Don't be like me. If you love her, tell her. Don't wait until it's too late. Caleb stared at his father, at the frail man in the hospital bed who'd spent his entire life pushing people away, and saw himself. I will, he said. Good. Caleb stayed at the hospital for 3 hours. They didn't talk much after that, but it didn't matter. The silence felt different now, less like a wall and more like a truce. When Caleb finally left, the sky was dark. He called Ellie from the car. Hey, Dad? Hey, you at Victoria's? Yeah, she made dinner. Are you coming home? Soon. I'm at the hospital. What? Are you okay? I'm fine. It's Grandpa. He had a heart attack. There was a pause. Is he okay? Yeah, he's stable. Are you okay? Caleb's chest tightened. Yeah, I think so. Okay, come home soon. I will. He hung up and sat in the parking lot for a long time, staring at the hospital entrance. His father's words echoed in his head. Don't wait until it's too late. Caleb started the car and drove home. When he pulled into the driveway, the lights were on in Victoria's house. He could see her and Ellie through the window, sitting at the table, laughing about something. He walked over and knocked. Victoria opened the door, her smile fading when she saw his face. Caleb, what happened? Can we talk? She glanced back at Ellie, who was watching from the table. Yeah, of course. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. They stood on the porch, the same spot where they'd sat a dozen times before. My dad had a heart attack, Caleb said. Victoria's hand went to her mouth. Oh my God, is he okay? Yeah, he's stable, but it was close. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. I know, but still. Victoria. He cut her off. She stopped, looking at him with worried eyes. Caleb took a breath. I went to see him. We talked. Really talked. For the first time in years. That's good. Yeah, it was. And he told me something that I can't stop thinking about. What? He said he regrets not taking more risks, that he spent his whole life playing it safe, and it left him alone. Victoria's expression softened. Caleb, and I realize that's exactly what I've been doing, playing it safe, keeping everyone at a distance so I don't get hurt. But all it's done is make me miserable. You're not miserable. I was. Before you. She didn't say anything. She just watched him, waiting. I love you, Caleb said. I'm terrified of it. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but I do. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Caleb, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. She stepped forward and kissed him. Not soft, not gentle, hard and desperate and full of everything they'd both been holding back. When she pulled away, she was smiling through the tears. I love you too, you idiot. Caleb laughed. It felt good. It felt right. Good, he said. She kissed him again, and for the first time in 6 years, Caleb felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. They went inside together. Ellie looked up from her homework and grinned. Finally, she said. Finally what? Caleb asked. You guys figured it out. Victoria laughed. We're that obvious? You've been obvious since the festival. Caleb shook his head, but he was smiling. Ellie went back to her homework, and he sat down next to Victoria at the table, their hands finding each other like it was the most natural thing in the world. For the first time in a long time, Caleb let himself believe that maybe things were going to be okay. But life had a way of testing that belief. 2 weeks later, Victoria got a call. Caleb was at her place when it happened, helping her fix a leaky faucet. She answered the phone and her face changed immediately. When? She said into the phone. Caleb stopped what he was doing and looked at her. Okay, I'll be there tomorrow. She hung up and stared at the phone. What's wrong? Caleb asked. My brother, he's in the hospital. What happened? Car accident. He's okay, but he's asking for me. Where is he? Seattle. Caleb's stomach sank. Seattle was 1,000 miles away. How long will you be gone? I don't know. A few days? Maybe a week? Okay. She looked at him, searching his face. You okay with that? Yeah, of course. He's your brother. But, Victoria, go. He needs you. She nodded, but she looked uncertain, like she was waiting for him to change his mind, to pull away, to prove that he couldn't handle this. But he didn't. He pulled her into a hug and held her tight. It's okay, he said. I'll be here when you get back. She pulled back and looked at him. Promise? Promise. Hassan. Victoria left the next morning. Caleb stood in the driveway with Ellie, watching her car disappear down the road. Ellie waved until Victoria was out of sight, then looked up at him. She's coming back, right? Yeah, she's coming back. You're sure? Yeah. But as the days passed, the doubts started creeping in. Victoria called every night, but the conversations were short. She was tired. Her brother was recovering, but it was slow. She didn't know when she'd be able to leave. A few days turned into a week. A week turned into 2. And Caleb felt the old fear start to settle back in. What if she didn't come back? What if something happened? What if he'd let himself care too much and now he was going to lose her just like he'd lost everyone else? He didn't say any of this to Victoria. He told her everything was fine, that he understood, that he'd wait as long as she needed. But Ellie saw through it. You're doing it again, she said one night at dinner. Doing what? Shutting down. I'm not shutting down. Yes, you are. You get quiet when you're scared. I'm not scared. Dad? He looked at her. She was watching him with those serious eyes, the ones that saw everything. Okay, he admitted. Maybe I'm a little scared. Of what? That she won't come back. She will. How do you know? Because she loves you, and she loves me. And people don't just leave when they love you. Caleb wanted to believe that. But his wife had loved him, and she'd left anyway. Not by choice, but still. What if something happens? He said quietly. Then we deal with it. But you can't spend your whole life waiting for something bad to happen. She sounded just like Victoria, just like his father, just like everyone who'd been trying to tell him the same thing for years. When did you get so smart? Caleb asked. Ellie shrugged. I've always been smart. You're just noticing now. He smiled despite himself. Victoria came back 3 days later. Caleb was at work when she texted him. I'm home. Can we talk? His heart jumped into his throat. Can we talk? That never meant anything good. He told Ray he needed to leave early and drove home faster than he should have. When he pulled into the driveway, Victoria was sitting on her porch, waiting. He walked over, trying to read her expression. She looked tired, sad, maybe. Hey, he said. Hey, how's your brother? He's okay. He'll be in physical therapy for a while, but he's going to be fine. That's good. Yeah. She didn't say anything else, just sat there staring at her hands. Caleb sat down next to her. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Victoria, he asked me to come back. Caleb's stomach dropped. What? My brother. He asked me to come back to Seattle, to help him run the company while he recovers. For how long? 6 months. Maybe longer. Caleb felt like the ground had just disappeared beneath him. What did you say? I told him I'd think about it. And? She finally looked at him. I don't know what to do. What do you mean? I mean, I don't know if I should go or stay. Caleb stared at her. You want to go. I didn't say that. But you're thinking about it. Yeah, I am. He stood up, his chest tight. So this was all just temporary. You were always going to leave. That's not fair, isn't it? You moved here to get away from your old life, but the second it calls, you're ready to go back. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Victoria stood up too, her voice rising. It's complicated, Caleb. He's my brother. He needs me. And what about us? What about Ellie? Don't do that. Don't make this about Ellie. She loves you, I love you, and you're just going to walk away. I'm not walking away. I'm trying to figure out what's right. What's right is staying here. With us. You can't ask me to choose like that. Why not? Isn't that what love is? Choosing someone? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to lose you, but I can't just abandon my brother either. Caleb felt everything he'd been afraid of crashing down around him. He'd known this would happen. He'd known it was too good to be true. Then go, he said quietly. What? Go to Seattle, help your brother. Do what you need to do. Caleb, I mean it. Go. Don't do this. Don't shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm letting you go. There's a difference. Victoria stared at him, tears streaming down her face. I don't want to go. But you're going to anyway. She didn't deny it. Caleb turned and walked back to his house. He didn't look back. He couldn't. That night, Ellie found him sitting on the porch in the dark. Victoria's leaving, isn't she? She said. Yeah. Did you ask her to stay? No. Why not? Because it wouldn't change anything. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Ellie sat down next to him. You're giving up. I'm being realistic. No, you're being scared. Again. Caleb looked at his daughter. Elle, sometimes people leave, and there's nothing you can do about it. Mom didn't leave on purpose. I know. And Victoria's not leaving forever. She's just going to help her brother. For 6 months, maybe longer. So? That's not forever. It might as well be. Ellie stood up, her face angry. You're such a coward. Ellie, you finally found someone who makes you happy, and you're just letting her go without a fight. That's not brave, that's just sad. She went inside, slamming the door behind her. Caleb sat alone in the dark, knowing she was right and hating himself for it. Victoria left 2 days later. Caleb watched from his window as she loaded boxes into her car, the same way he'd watched her move in months ago. Ellie stood at the door, wanting to say goodbye, but Caleb told her to stay inside. He told himself it was easier this way, cleaner. He was lying to himself again. Victoria knocked on the door anyway. Caleb pretended not to hear it. Ellie opened it before he could stop her. Hi, Victoria said softly. Hi, Ellie replied, her voice small. Can I talk to your dad? He's being stupid. I know. Caleb appeared in the hallway, unable to hide anymore. Victoria looked at him, her eyes red like she'd been crying. He kept his face neutral. It was the only way he could get through this. I'm leaving, she said. I know. I'll be back. Sure. Caleb, please, have a safe trip. He turned and walked upstairs before she could say anything else. He heard Ellie's muffled voice, heard Victoria's quiet response, heard the door close. Then the sound of her car starting, driving away, gone. Ellie came upstairs and stood in his doorway. I hate you right now. I know. She wanted to say goodbye. She wanted to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. You're such a liar. She left. Caleb sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, feeling the familiar emptiness settle back in. This was better. This was safer. This was what he knew. It felt like dying. The first week was the hardest. Caleb went through the motions. Work, dinner, checking Ellie's homework, staring at the ceiling at night. Everything felt gray, flat, like someone had turned down the volume on his entire life. Ellie barely spoke to him. She answered questions with one word, ate her meals in silence, spent most of her time in her room. When he tried to talk to her, she just looked at him with disappointment and walked away. He deserved it. Ray noticed at work. You look terrible. Thanks. I'm serious. What happened? Nothing. Did Victoria leave? Caleb didn't answer. Ray sighed. You let her go, didn't you? She made her choice. Did she, or did you make it for her? Caleb kept his eyes on the inventory sheet in front of him. Drop it, Ray. No, I'm not going to drop it. You've been miserable for 6 years, and the first time someone makes you happy, you push her away. That's not noble. That's just stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I've known you for 5 years, Caleb. I've watched you shut everyone out. I've watched you turn yourself into a ghost. And I kept my mouth shut because I figured you'd work through it eventually. But this is different. How? Because you're not protecting yourself anymore. You're punishing yourself. And you're punishing Ellie too. Caleb's jaw tightened. I'm protecting Ellie. From what? From seeing her father happy? From having someone else in her life who cares about her? That's not protection. That's fear. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Caleb slammed the clipboard down. I can't go through it again, okay? I can't lose someone else. I can't put Ellie through that. Ray's expression softened. So you'd rather lose her now, before anything bad happens? How does that make sense? It just does. No, it doesn't. And deep down, you know it. Caleb grabbed his jacket. I'm taking my break. He left before Ray could say anything else. He drove to the lake, parked at the overlook where he used to bring his wife before Ellie was born. The water was calm, reflecting the cloudy sky. He sat on the hood of his truck and stared at nothing. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Made it to Seattle. Brother's doing better. Miss you. He stared at the message for a long time. His finger hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to respond. Wanted to tell her he missed her too, that he was sorry, that he'd made a mistake. But what if she didn't come back? What if 6 months turned into a year? What if she realized her old life was better and decided to stay? He put the phone away without responding. 2 weeks turned into 3. Ellie started talking to him again, but it was different. Polite, distant, like she was being careful not to push him too hard. It reminded him of how she'd been right after her mother died. Quiet, careful, afraid to make things worse. He hated it. One night he tried to bridge the gap. You want to watch a movie? I have homework. You finished your homework an hour ago. Ellie looked at him. I don't really feel like it. I'm tired, Dad. I'm just going to read. She went upstairs. Caleb sat alone in the living room, the TV on but muted, feeling like he'd lost everything that mattered. His phone rang. His father. Hey, Dad. Caleb, how are you? Fine. You're a terrible liar. Caleb almost smiled. Yeah, I know. Victoria left, didn't she? How did you get... Ellie called me. Caleb's eyes widened. She what? She called me 2 days ago. Said you were being an idiot and needed someone to talk some sense into you. I can't believe she did that. She's worried about you, and she's right. You are being an idiot. Thanks. I'm serious. You told me you loved this woman, and now you're letting her go without a fight. She chose to leave. Did she? Or did you make it impossible for her to stay? Caleb didn't respond. His father sighed. I told you not to wait until it's too late. And here you are, waiting. What am I supposed to do? Chase her to Seattle? Beg her to come back? That's what it takes, yeah. That's not how it works. Why not? Because what if she says no? What if I put myself out there and she tells me she's not coming back? Then at least you'll know. But right now you're living in this limbo where you're miserable and she probably is too. And for what? Because you're too scared to take a risk? Caleb closed his eyes. I don't know how to do this. Nobody does. That's the whole point. Love isn't something you figure out. It's something you choose. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. What if I'm not strong enough? You are. You've been strong enough to survive losing your wife, raising Ellie on your own, keeping everything together for 6 years. You think loving someone is harder than that? Caleb didn't answer. Because maybe it was. Maybe loving someone required a different kind of strength, the kind he wasn't sure he had. Think about it, his father said. But don't think too long. Life's short, and the people we love don't wait forever. He hung up. Caleb sat in the dark, his father's words echoing in his head. He thought about Victoria, about the way she'd looked at him on her porch, about the tears in her eyes when he'd told her to go. She hadn't wanted to leave. She'd wanted him to ask her to stay, and he'd been too scared to do it. The next morning, Caleb woke up with a decision made. He didn't know if it was the right one, but it was the only one he could live with. He knocked on Ellie's door. Get dressed. We're going somewhere. She opened the door, confused. Where? Seattle. Her eyes went wide. What? You were right. I was being a coward. And I'm done being a coward. Ellie threw her arms around him. Finally. They left an hour later. The drive to Seattle was 14 hours, and they did it in one shot. Caleb bought energy drinks at every gas station, and Ellie kept him awake by playing terrible music and asking him questions about Victoria. What are you going to say to her? Ellie asked somewhere around hour 9. I don't know yet. You should probably figure that out. I will. When? When I see her, Ellie grinned. You're nervous. Yeah, I am. Good. You should be. You really messed up. I know. But she'll forgive you. How do you know? Because she loves you, and people forgive the people they love. Caleb glanced at her. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just never listened. He smiled. She was right about that, too. März. They got to Seattle just after midnight. Caleb had Victoria's address from a package she'd sent Ellie a week ago. A book Ellie had mentioned wanting. He'd memorized it without realizing it. The apartment building was downtown, sleek and modern, and completely different from the small house by the lake. Caleb parked across the street and stared up at the lit windows. What if she doesn't want to see me? He said. Then we drove 14 hours for nothing, Ellie said. But we won't know unless you try. Caleb took a breath. Okay, wait here. No way. I'm coming with you. Ellie, I'm coming. He didn't argue. They got out of the truck and crossed the street. The lobby was locked, but there was a buzzer. Caleb found Victoria's name and pressed it. Nothing. He pressed it again. A crackling voice came through the speaker. Hello? Victoria. She sounded half asleep. It's me, Caleb said. Silence. Caleb? Yeah. What are you doing here? Can we talk? Another pause. Then the door buzzed. They went inside. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt like it took an hour. Ellie squeezed his hand. You've got this. I hope so. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Victoria was standing in the hallway in pajama pants and an old sweatshirt, her hair messy, her face confused. Caleb? Ellie? What? I'm sorry, Caleb said. Victoria blinked. What? I'm sorry for everything, for pushing you away, for telling you to leave, for being too scared to ask you to stay. You drove all the way here to tell me that? Yeah. It's 14 hours. I know. You could have called. I needed to see you. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Caleb, I love you, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life regretting that I let you go. I know you're here for your brother. I know you have obligations, but I'm asking you, when you're done here, come back. Please, come back to us. Victoria covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. You really drove 14 hours. Yeah, that's insane. I know. She laughed through the tears, then crossed the hallway and kissed him. Ellie cheered. Victoria pulled back, still crying, still smiling. I was coming back, she said. What? I was always coming back. I told you that, 6 months, maybe less. I just needed you to believe me. I do. I believe you. Do you really? Or are you just saying that because you drove all this way? Caleb cupped her face in his hands. I believe you. And I'm going to keep believing you, even when I'm scared, even when it's hard, because you're worth it. Victoria kissed him again, this time slower, softer, like they had all the time in the world. When they finally pulled apart, Ellie was grinning. Does this mean you're coming back? Yeah, Victoria said, laughing. I'm coming back. Good, because Dad's terrible at cooking and the house is a mess without you. Victoria looked at Caleb. Is that true? Completely. She shook her head, smiling. You two are a disaster. We know, Ellie said. That's why we need you. They stayed in Seattle for 2 days. Caleb met Victoria's brother, who was recovering well and grateful for Victoria's help, but insisted she didn't need to stay the full 6 months. He'd hired someone to manage things while he healed. Victoria could go home whenever she wanted. She wanted to go home now. They drove back together, Victoria following in her car. The drive felt shorter this time, lighter, like the weight Caleb had been carrying for years was finally starting to lift. When they pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Not physically, but to Caleb, it felt like coming home for the first time in a long time. Victoria parked next to him. Ellie ran over and hugged her before she could even get out of the car. You're really back, Ellie said. I'm really back. For good? Victoria looked at Caleb. Yeah, for good. Awesome. The next few months were the best Caleb could remember. Victoria moved back into the house next door, but she spent most of her time at theirs. They had dinner together every night. She helped Ellie with school projects. She fixed things Caleb had been avoiding for years. She fit into their lives like she'd always been there, and Caleb learned how to let her. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when the fear crept back in, when he woke up in the middle of the night and checked to make sure she was still next door. When Ellie got sick and he felt the old panic rising. When Victoria talked about the future and he had to fight the urge to pull away. But he didn't pull away. He stayed. He pushed through the fear. And every time he did, it got a little easier. One night, they were sitting on the porch, their usual spot, when Victoria said, I've been thinking. About what? About moving. Caleb's stomach dropped. What? She laughed. Not away, just next door. This is stupid, don't you think? Me living over there when I'm always over here? You want to move in? Yeah, if you'll have me. Caleb looked at her. At the woman who'd walked into his life and refused to leave even when he'd pushed her away. At the woman who'd seen all his broken pieces and loved him anyway. Yeah, he said. I'll have you. Victoria smiled. Good, because Ellie already helped me pack half my stuff. Caleb laughed. Of course she did. Victoria moved in 2 weeks later. Ellie was ecstatic. She helped arrange furniture, picked out new curtains, and insisted they have a family dinner to celebrate. It felt right. It felt whole. That night, after Ellie went to bed, Caleb and Victoria sat on the porch. The lake was calm, the stars were out, and for the first time in years, Caleb felt at peace. Thank you, he said. For what? For not giving up on me. Victoria took his hand. You're worth not giving up on. I don't know about that. I do. They sat in silence for a while. Then Caleb spoke. I used to think that loving someone meant risking everything. And I was right, it does. But I was wrong about what that meant. What do you mean? I thought risking everything meant I'd lose, that it was inevitable. But it's not. Sometimes you risk everything and you win. Sometimes you get to keep the people you love, and that's worth it, even if it's scary. Victoria squeezed his hand. Yeah, it is. 6 months later, Caleb's father came to visit. He was doing better, taking his medication, going to physical therapy, generally being less stubborn. He and Caleb were still working through things, but it was progress. He met Victoria officially for the first time over dinner. Ellie cooked, with help, and they all sat around the table like a real family. "She's good for you," his father said later when it was just the two of them on the porch. "I know." "You happy?" Caleb thought about it. "Yeah, I am." "Good. You deserve it." "I don't know about that." "I do. You've been through enough. You've earned this." Caleb looked at his father. "Thanks, Dad." "For what?" "For being honest with me. For telling me not to wait." His father smiled. "Any time." Bad. A year after Victoria moved in, Caleb proposed. It wasn't fancy. No big speech, just the three of them at the lake, skipping stones, and Caleb pulling a ring out of his pocket and asking if she'd marry him. Victoria said yes before he even finished the question. Ellie tackled them both in a hug, laughing and crying at the same time. They got married 3 months later. Small ceremony. Just family and a few friends. Ellie was the maid of honor. Ray cried. Caleb's father gave a speech about second chances. It was perfect. Not because it was flawless, but because it was real. Life didn't become easy after that. There were still hard days. Days when Caleb woke up scared. Days when Ellie struggled at school. Days when Victoria missed her old life and wondered if she'd made the right choice. But they got through them. Together. Because that's what love is. Not the absence of fear or pain or doubt, but the choice to stay anyway, to fight for each other even when it's hard, to build something real out of the broken pieces. Caleb had spent 6 years thinking that the only way to protect himself was to shut everyone out, to build walls so high that nothing could hurt him. But walls don't just keep pain out, they keep life out too. And he'd learned that the hard way. Victoria had taught him that opening up wasn't weakness, it was strength. That risking your heart wasn't foolish, it was brave. And Ellie had taught him that love doesn't make you vulnerable, it makes you whole. 2 years after they got married, they were sitting on the porch again, the same spot where everything had started, where Caleb had first let himself believe that maybe he could be happy again. Ellie was inside, doing homework and definitely not eavesdropping, even though she absolutely was. "You ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't moved here?" Victoria asked. "All the time." "Scared?" "Yeah, but grateful." She smiled. "Me too." Caleb looked at the lake, at the water that didn't freeze anymore, at the sky that was too big and too beautiful to ignore. He thought about his wife, about the life they'd had, about the loss he'd carried for so long, and he realized something. Loving Victoria didn't mean forgetting his wife, it didn't mean replacing her or moving on like she'd never existed. It just meant he'd found a way to keep living, to keep loving, to keep being human. And that's all anyone can do. The people we lose don't want us to stop living. They want us to keep going, to find joy again, to take risks, to love deeply and fully and without reservation. Because life is short, and the people who love us don't wait forever. Caleb had learned that the hard way, but he'd learned it. And now, sitting on the porch with Victoria's hand in his and Ellie's laughter echoing from inside, he understood something he hadn't understood before. Fear is a choice. Love is a choice. And every day, we get to decide which one wins. He'd spent 6 years letting fear win, but not anymore. Now, he chose love. And it made all the difference. Yeah. The lake reflected the sunset, turning gold and orange and pink. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. Inside, Ellie called out asking if they wanted dessert. Caleb smiled. "Yeah," he called back, "we want dessert." Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was good. It was full. It was enough. And for the first time in a long time, Caleb Ward wasn't just surviving. He was living. And that was everything.